So good morning. Is it still morning? It's a minute before, so we're still good. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Diversity Committee to order, please. My name is Elizabeth Velez. I am the new chair of the Diversity Committee. Thank you. Very excited to be in this role. The MTA has always been the gold standard, I think, with regard to minority and women business inclusion. And I'm just overwhelmed and proud and really encouraged to be able to be sitting next to Michael Garner and to be able to take, hopefully, the MTA to greater heights and new areas with the Diversity Committee. At this time, I'd like to welcome Frankie Miranda, new board member, Midori Valdivia, and Neil Zuckerman. Okay. Michael, are there any public speakers for today?
Yes, there's two, one in person and one virtual.
Good afternoon. We have two members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. The first speaker is Jason Anthony, who's in person, followed by Charlton Desua, who's virtual.
Good afternoon, Diversity Committee. Jason Anthony from Amazon Labor Union, the first independent grassroots union that comprises Amazon workers that is created here in New York City. It is good to be back 1 week after my 36th birthday. That was on Juneteenth, by the way. Well, this month, let's talk about women. It is good to have women in the workforce, especially in my union, that our Vice President, Angelica Maldonado, is our Vice President. But it's always good that the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, better known as the MTA, should have more women in the MTA board. And I should welcome the new MTA board members, and they should get used to seeing me. I've been here for many years, speaking in front of the MTA board. Thing that they should know is that one, I love to see women being in the MTA board. Two, they should never be quiet. They should always speak up. And two, we should always have diversity inside the MTA board and everywhere inside the MTA across the board. So that'll be all for the Diversity Committee. I'll see you guys in the next committee meeting.
The next and final speaker is Charlton D'Souza, who is virtual.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlton D'Souza. I'm the president of Passengers United. And I want to welcome Chairman Velez to the committee, and to all the new board members, welcome. My concern is this, and some of my members at Passengers United, we've had some problems with the PCEC, Permanent Citizens Advisory Council, and I want a top to bottom audit review about how members for the PCEC are brought in. And we've put together a letter of our concerns that we want addressed by the chairman and by the authority of this board. And we've also sent a letter to the governor and mayor calling for a top to bottom change at the PCEC. I want to know how the positions are advertised, how members are put in, and what is the purpose of the PCEC, because several of my members have been made to feel unwelcome at meetings, and this is going back at least 2 years. And we don't feel it's right, because we're attending all the meetings and we're speaking, And when things are being said to us inappropriately, that needs to be investigated. And I've lost patience with this. So we're grassroots advocates. We care about the MTA. We care about the passengers. But I do feel that there are some issues that need to be addressed. And I would also suggest, that I'll make a suggestion to the chairman that the inspector general also launch an investigation into some of these allegations, which I'm not going to get into here. But I feel like the diversity committee should look into the PCC about making it more inclusive to members of color. And it should be members who attend all the MT board and committee meetings and the PCC meetings, which we do. So that should also be done. Thank you.
Chair, that concludes the public comment session.
Thank you for the public speakers. Next, can we have approval of the March 28th, 2022 Diversity Committee meeting minutes? May I have a motion? Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions? Minutes are approved and carried. Regarding the Diversity Committee work plans, are there any updates on the 2022 work plan?
There's none.
Regarding executive summary, Michael, can you take us through the executive summary?
Absolutely, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to talk about the business and diversity initiatives.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and other board members here. Thank you. I'm just going to highlight some of our successes this term. During the period of January 22nd through March 22nd, 2022, DDCR outreach efforts attracted 465 firms. As a result of DDCR's outreach efforts, 13 certified firms received a total of $18,974,074 in awards, and 66 certified firms received $24,283,922 in payments. That's all for business and diversity initiatives.
Thank you. Next is our Dbe Certification Activities.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. During year 2021, there were a total of 87 new applications received, and a total of 57 firms were certified. The average processing time to process certified firms in 2021 was 29 days. This year, from January 1st to March 31st, a total of 23 new applications were received, and a total of 13 firms were certified. During the same period, the average processing time to process certified firms was 57 days. Thank you.
I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Green to give us an update on our 2022 EEO activities.
Good morning. As of first quarter 2022, MTA's overall workforce was comprised of 70,177 employees, of which 18% were female. That's 12,767 employees, and 71% were minorities. We also had 3% veteran and 1% of people who have identified as individuals with disabilities. When compared to the same quarter in 2021, the overall workforce headcount has slightly decreased by a mere 0.4%. That's 69,911, and at the same time in 2021, to our current workforce of 70,177 employees. A detailed look of the agency-specific workforce data is provided on pages 54 through 117. So from page 54 to page 117, we can look at each agency individually to look at those workforce statistics for their specific agencies. Now, Chief Administrative Officer Lisette Camillo and I will provide a presentation to discuss agency-wide workforce diversity statistics and introduce the People organization. As we've said before, the MTA firmly believes in a diverse workforce. We believe that our diversity makes us stronger. Our goal in every recruitment and every outreach, whether it's through the contracting side or the people side, is to make sure we have the right people, the right contractors in place so that they can participate in the opportunities at the MTA. And well, we know this is a new board, and you're going to hear us a lot talk about this word called underutilization. So we wanted to take just a moment and kind of give a real high-level overview of underutilization. The Federal Transit Administration, FTA, circular requires that we complete a utilization analysis that identifies job categories that have an underutilization or concentration of minorities or females in relation to their availability in the labor market. Now, when we refer to underutilization, that is when our workforce representation of any group in a particular job category is less than what is reasonably expected based on their presence in the relevant labor market. So I'm going to take a pause there. When we say the relevant labor market, we're talking about individuals that have the requisite skill set to perform the opportunities at the MTA. A lot of times we get a lot of comments and questions about females represent 51% or 50+% of the world, of the United States, or of a particular area. But when we look at our underutilization and when we set goals for the MTA, we actually look at the job titles, we look at the people in those particular categories, whether it's a minority category or a female category, and we look to see if they have the requisite skills for the opportunities that we have at the MTA. So sometimes the numbers seem to be a little bit lower than we would expect if we were looking for just representation. So we're going to have some more conversations with the board about how we set the goals and what the goals are as we get closer to the update of our Equal Opportunity Program. Whoops. Can we go back one? There. Let's skip one. Well, we had a slide here that talked about the type of jobs. We talked about job categories. There are 8 job categories here at the MTA. And in those 8 job categories, we have 4 that we are experiencing underutilization. Now, the underutilization that we are speaking of today is based on the workforce data that was post-consolidation. So now that we have, no, pre-consolidation, I'm sorry. So now that we have consolidated, we will be presenting you with new data that talks about the new goals and new areas that we may be underutilized in. But for right now, we're going to talk about our underutilization that's in officials and administrators. That's one of the categories. The type of jobs there would be executive leaders, senior management, some of our management, well, all of our management staff. So it would be those type of titles. The underutilization we have in that area is for females, blacks, and Hispanics. The next category that we have underutilization is administrative support. Now, the type of jobs that we would see in administrative support would be inventory control clerks, record clerks, cashiers, warehouse persons, media liaisons, administrative assistants. The areas of underutilization we have in this category are females, Hispanics, and Asian Pacific Islander. So now the other the other category that we have underutilization is skilled craft. The type of jobs that you would typically see in skilled craft is going to be machine operators, carpenters, welders, plumbers, elevator operators, maintenance, electricians. The areas of underutilization here is females, Hispanics, and Asian Pacific Islanders. Now, the last area, or the last category that we have had underutilization in is in service maintenance. And the type of jobs that you would find in this category would be our bus operators, our conductors, our custodians, welder helpers, dispatchers, track walkers. Our areas of underutilization here is females, Hispanics, and Asian Pacific Islanders. I don't know. Now it looks like it's going backwards. Okay. So now that we've gone over what type of job titles are in those areas of underutilization, we want to kind of get a better picture of where's the workforce here. When we look at service maintenance and skilled craft, you see that is the majority of the workforce at the MTA. Service maintenance, looking at the first quarter data, there's 26,803 employees. And then if you take skilled craft, which is another 26,615 employees, those two categories alone is over 50% of the workforce, pretty much over 80% of the workforce. Because of that, that's about 53,000 jobs just in those two categories. The other two areas that we have underutilization, the other two categories, administrative support, there's 4,747 employees, and office and administrative, we have 5,359 employees. Now, as we said before, we're currently reclassifying our positions to align with the recently released census occupational data and our newly restructured organization. It is quite likely that the areas of underutilization will change.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's my turn. Thank you so much, Rosalind, for teeing things up. I thought it would be helpful, since we're starting with a number of new board members at today's committee meeting, to take a little step back and talk a little bit about our workforce generally at the MTA, and also some of the challenges that we're facing in this area. So this slide over here on your right, if you notice, there's a bit of an imbalance here of sorts. New York City Transit, as you can see, has the lion's share of our workforce. About 50,000 employees are within transit, and many of the job categories and job titles that Dr. Green mentioned, the numbers game will typically show that New York City Transit is where many of them are. The reason why I'm highlighting this is because some of the challenges that we will face in the areas of underrepresentation or underutilization deals with civil service, right? For the vast majority of the positions in New York City Transit, it is a civil service agency. You have to take a test, you have to pay for a test, sign up, take it, pass, get on a list, and wait. And that poses its own issues that we have to, work through in order to talk through how to address some of the underutilization. One of the things I do want to highlight as well, that Dr. Green mentioned, is that the data that you went through is historical data, right? This is something that has been, I think it was for data that was collected and analyzed several years ago. We're currently doing or working and wading through a recategorization of the census data to determine where we stand now. But it's a good point to flag, because not only is work being done to recategorize census data, but I did want to mention that we are, as you know, working through our own and going through some post-transformation rebuilding, right? We are now what I consider a new organization where the people organization has consolidated to have one organization provide support for 5 separate agencies. And as we are working through how to recalibrate our own team and think through in a different posture how to address underutilization. The work of coming together and coming up with a brand new strategy on how to approach underutilization is work that we will have to do now under our reconstituted people organization. And that's something that Michael and Rosalind and I have started those discussions, and so that's work that we're going to do prospectively. So I mentioned post-transformation rebuilding, civil service requirements as something that we have to navigate. Some of the other challenges in hiring that I don't think anyone who's familiar with the transportation industry will debate is that there's intense competition for skilled workers who know how to run and operate transportation industry, transportation machinery, jobs, et cetera. So there are only a handful of employers that are competing over the same talent. Similarly, I think also all large organizations are experiencing a lack of increased competition in the skilled crafts generally. There are challenges hiring, for example, elevator and escalator maintainers, and that's an issue across the board. So we're competing with employers for similar skilled categories, and if we're talking in the civil service realm, it makes it even harder to attract new entrants. Another issue, we are not just an employer in New York City. We span 3 states. We're a regional employer, so we have to really be creative in how we recruit and how we target geographically. And we have to be more creative in trying to attract new talent, and our approach has to be broader. And finally, I think I mentioned before. Actually, I might not have mentioned before, but certainly in the previous board meeting, I talked a little bit about our challenges with regarding coming out of a number of hiring freezes. We do have are coming out of an inability to fill positions once they've become vacant, and we are now at a point where we have to hire very quickly, which poses a great opportunity to really focus on diversity and bring new perspectives and new people into our workforce, which is what the People Organization in partnership with DDCR is working on, and I'll talk through some of those approaches momentarily. But we are, the point in time is important to note that there's a lot going on, but we're definitely, building up and repositioning our approach to make sure that we're laser focused on not only bringing and filling those vacancies, but making sure that we're trying to attract a very diverse workforce. And then finally, we do have a number of federal, state, and local requirements that we have to manage that we just can't ignore. So that's why it made it into the bullet. So there are 2 buckets that we primarily focus on, and that's attracting and recruiting new talent and developing, engaging, and retaining our current workforce. So for the external candidates, we really look at our recruitment campaigns, which I'll talk about to give you a flavor of some of the initiatives that we're undertaking. We are enhancing our web presence. I personally am very excited about that because our MTA job site has been, it needed a makeover, and we're doing it, and we will soon launch, and I'll talk a little bit about what that's going to look like. We have a number of pipeline programs, again, which are targeted to both particular skills and crafts, but also a much broader approach to just getting smart, talented people and diverse people onto the MTA workforce. And finally, educational programs and partnerships with a number of diverse organizations, again, to make sure that we're having a broad outreach externally to bring in new blood. So for our internal workforce, We are looking at coaching our existing talent. We have a diversity leadership initiative, which I'll talk a little bit more about. We are relaunching a broader, and I think very powerful employee resource groups program all across the agency, which is new, and I'll explain why later. And then a telework policy, which we are starting to roll out, which I can talk a bit about. I think it balances the need for flexibility that our workforce has been requesting and asking for, but also in a way that's responsible and really focused on ensuring productivity is kept. And that's, we're launching that next month. Very excited about that. So going through some of the initiatives that the People organization is baking into their process really is about trying to get through not just filling these vacancies, but really partnering with organizations to create relationships and increase our diversity. So we have a really good relationship with the technical education high schools, New York City public schools that are very diverse, and we want to leverage that as much as possible. We source apprentice from 10 plus schools, including Transit Tech, William Grady, George Westinghouse, Thomas Edison. We have a number of career fairs all across the region. Certainly our go-to Cuny, one of the most diverse institutions, certainly in New York, but probably in the country. We have a number of recruitment fairs to really make that relationship stronger. When we post our opportunities, we really have upped our game when it comes to social media. We really want to make sure we're getting the word out there. We have a LinkedIn relationship that we also improved upon this year, really to make sure to get attention to our postings, military spouse employment portal as well. And we work with our partners at the state as well. Our People organization is very busy. We do over 100 outreach events, really talking to colleges, high schools, organizations that have to do with military installations and people with disabilities to really conduct outreach and job fairs. We have deepened our relationships with a number of diversity groups and the military organizations as well. We have actually this year, in fact, we've also launched, I think, quite successful, I call them mass hiring events that are targeted to particular industries. We had an IT Tech Expo that was very successful, where we were interviewing people and making offers on the spot in some cases. And the railroads themselves have had hiring fairs where people showed up by invitation after they submitted the ability to perform certain work, take a test right there, really to advance the process and onboard folks as much as possible. Okay, so I mentioned our online presence, and this is something that's very exciting for me because many times when you're a job seeker, your first touch point is an organization's website. And we're doing a complete overhaul of our jobs website, which I think is going to be, really great. Not only does it look really nice, but it's also able to match the person's interest with available job opportunities, even if they might not have keyed in all of the things correctly. We're leveraging artificial intelligence to do the matching. We're still working on this, so it has not launched yet. But I'm talking about it because it's happening and it's going to go live this year. And one of the deliverables is that once you're on there a couple of times, it definitely personalizes the content for the visitor, making it making connections quicker and easier. On our end, on the back end, it will allow for analytics and reporting. We can track people who might be interested, and we can follow up if they've showed enough touch points. And finally, the mobile optimization functionality is really important. We want to make it as easy as possible to submit a job application. So you can do that from your couch, when you're standing online on the supermarket. We really want to make sure that we're getting as many people apply as possible. moving over to the pipeline program, we have a number of active programs, particularly with particular skills. A few apprenticeship programs, structural, electrical, and mechanical apprenticeship programs, mostly in the transit world. But we are certainly looking to grow and expand. We have an associate engineer training program as well that really works to get people in on the front end of their careers, grow them, and keep them within the MTA, really to make, hopefully, a long career path here. Some of the new and expanded programs, the first one in that second box I'm particularly excited about. It's a Cuny Internship partnership here. This is a centralized internship program with Cuny, which is launching this actually next week. About 100 Cuny students will descend upon the MTA, and hopefully they will start work here. They will love it, and they will continue wanting to work here past their internship. And as I mentioned before, one of the key points about this, which makes me so excited, is that Cuny, the most diverse institution of higher education in the country, we now have a relationship with. This is the first year where it's a centralized program. I'm hoping that it is the entry level, like the floor, because I would hope that it is successful and we can grow and expand the number of students we bring in. It is not over when the summer's over. It continues on through the fall and spring, and hopefully will grow even beyond what we have for this year. We have a number of other programs that are either new that we're working on or that we're working to expand. We have legal fellowships, a bus apprenticeship, and a relationship with the Non-Traditional Employment for Women apprenticeship program, where we place graduates of that program and give them full-time work here. But we are hopefully looking to grow that. So I mentioned Cuny. We love Cuny here. We have a number of educational partners and programs, and again, we start with Cuny since they're they're kind of all-encompassing and for education. But we also have a relationship with the Department of Youth and Community Development with the Summer Youth Employment Program, where we host students every year. City Polytechnical High School, which is one of the transit relationships that we're leveraging to, again, bring in new recruits here. We've worked with the Partnership for New York on Transit Tech Lab, where they help us figure out how to make, to kind of close some of those gaps with skills and workforce, and that's been a great partnership of shared learning and understanding. And finally, the NYU School of Professional Studies, where we're working with them to on a coaching initiative for our current workforce and new leaders. So shifting to to our internal employees, and I'll tick through these quickly, as I know we're on a clock. We have a number of resources identified for our workforce to be able to grow their skills and leadership abilities. So we have an MTA University where we have about 120 courses a year delivered live or virtually that our employees can sign up for and take. Udemy, we have a license, an enterprise license agreement where, again, we provide the ability for employees to select classes on their time and upskill in many areas. We have a new executive leadership program, again, that provides resources for executives in new roles to help them fulfill their goals or create goals and a roadmap to implement. And finally, Leaders Edge, another program to provide support for growing talent. I mentioned before that there's a Diversity Leadership Initiative, which is a program for MTA employees to get diversity and inclusion skill set. So I think one of these are very helpful in order to give a different framework or expanded framework on how to approach management, to look at diversity and inclusion as a lens to looking at everything, really. Unconscious bias is something that needs to be and is being taught through these classes and giving skills and tools for employees to manage without and to have those discussions to be able to move forward on things in the diversity leadership area. And then finally, we have employee resource groups that we are launching and expanding. These are something that had been initiated and developed within New York City Transit that we are now expanding across all agencies. It's 10 resource groups, 9 resource groups, all really they all have co-executive sponsors, but the real work and the programming comes from MTA employees who come up with wonderful ideas on programming and initiatives and cut across every agency and really positioning this program as a new resource for all employees, which I think is really exciting. Since I went to a couple of the programs, and it was really exciting to see people from across all agencies participate and get a lot of good stuff out of it.
One of the things I'd add about the employee resource groups is that their executive sponsors are the agency presidents. Every agency president is an executive sponsor to one of those employee resource groups, and that is awesome. And then the other part is that the function chiefs. So there's 2 executive sponsors, and it's an agency president and a function chief. And so with that top level support, we really want to amplify the employee's voice and make sure that we hear what their concerns are and we put action plans in place. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Well, I had a question going back to our EEO report. So you said the page numbers that Sorry, you said the page numbers for our EEO report, then we didn't ask any questions about it. So I have a couple of questions on that, if you don't mind. Is that okay now, or you want to cover this report first, and I'll come back to mine?
I think it's best if you ask your
Okay,
questions now.
great, thank you. So look, one of the challenges of retaining women in the workforce is they leave for all kinds of reasons at different milestones. Either they don't find a mentor, they go out on maternity leave, they don't feel comfortable coming back. There's lots of reasons, and the private sector has worked on this. I'm not suggesting but they have worked on it, and I've seen this in my firm and many others. There's some data in here that has our overall hiring and then retention of women that's specifically called out in a number of pages. We have the overall of the firm, of our company, our entity. 23% of our new hires is page 49. 23% of our new hires by sex through the first quarter were women, and separations was 21%. So same, that's pretty good, 23, 21. When you get to MTA HQ, Metro North and Long Island Railroad, you have the following numbers. 30% hire of women, but 43% of the separations for HQ. Metro North, 9% of the hires and 16% of the separations, almost double. And then Long Island Railroad is 12% hires and 20% separation. Those are pages 62, 71, and 80. 62, 71, and 80. So obviously, to get an average of 23 and 21, all the other groups, bridge and tunnels, transit, are much better. I'd like to understand why these 3 are so particularly bad. Now, these may be small numbers. You may say it's just Q1, so that's fine. Since I don't know where the data is for the rest of the year, I'm happy to give you the page numbers again. But it does seem like a major imbalance for those 3 entities. I would have imagined, actually, it was relatively even across all our agencies. I can't understand why those 3, HQ, Metro North, and Long Island Railroad, have such significantly worse retention rates. Said another way, churn rate, whatever you want to call the departures. So it just struck me, and it's not a criticism. I don't know whether it means anything, Q1 of 2022, but it certainly just struck me.
And Neil, thank you for raising that because I think this is a continual issue at the MTA as with many transportation agencies, but you do see those particularities in the commuter railroads. I think what's surprising to me is seeing that in HQ because HQ has more kind of administrative or, office work kind of jobs. So I understand from a service delivery standpoint or maintenance, we have low participation of women across industries, but it's interesting to see that in maybe administration or maybe management ranks. Yeah, so I would love any insight, but I don't think the LIR Metro North, and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's new in terms of the trends for the commuter railroads.
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak to the trends, but certainly the low numbers are not new. I think that to your point, they're demanding jobs, they're 24/7 jobs. The more junior employees, have less seniority, obviously, with respect to job assignments. So for, women who have, caretaking responsibilities, these are difficult jobs. I think that that's partly why we've had challenges with respect to retention.
Yes, we can go back and do a detailed look at that and see exactly what caused the separations for the females. I was looking at some of the pages as we were going. I was looking at Long Island Railroad. That was one of them, right?
Yeah, page 71, I assume you're talking about.
Yes. And so when I'm looking at 71, it's telling me that the difference here is we hired 179 employees, and 21 of those were female. At that same period, 46 separated, and 9 were female. So we actually retained more females than left. So the differences in those percentages may be the differences in the numbers, because the percentages is based on the number.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is if you take the pie chart to the right, I don't know if you want to put it on the screen. I don't know if we have that ability.
Yeah.
I don't know who's running the presentation on the screen here.
This is the diversity committee.
No, I mean, I don't know if this gentleman in the back has access. Thank you. Could you put up slide 71 from the board book, please? That's something you can do. You can't do that? All right. Anyway, so you've got 2 pie charts, right?
Yes.
So regardless of the absolute number that came in versus came out, it's on me. There's the pie chart on the screen. All right. Anyway. So regardless of how many came in or out, the churn rate, 100% of this is churn, meaning these are all who departed. And so 20% of those who departed are women. That is a higher percentage than who we brought in. That means we're losing more on a percentage basis of women than we're bringing in. You're absolutely right. The absolute numbers are different. But what I'm struggling with is if you go back to page
54. Are you talking about for the agency wide?
If you go back to all agency, and I would have assumed, if you look at page 49, all agency, I'll be back in the screen here, you basically have the same ratio, 23% female hired and 21% female separated. You want to have it be, I mean, look, ideally, if I was like in charge of the world, and I was with a father of 2 daughters, I'd have 50-50 on the new hires and 50-50 on the churn, and we wouldn't see any difference. But here we've got more women leaving, and I think Kathy said it correctly. But if this was true, you'd actually imagine if this was actually balanced, you would actually imagine that, to what Kathy said, New York City Transit would actually have more churn because it's a demanding job 24/7. We're not actually seeing that with transit. And oddly enough, the HQ, which, if you take what Kathy said, HQ should, no offense to folks who are in suits and ties, but HQ should be a less demanding, not 24/7 job versus, doing an overnight shift in, on a train line somewhere. So you would imagine that the HQ would be less churn for those who have the greater unfair responsibility at home to manage kids. Again, in the next 20 years, I hope that changes, but so I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying if I were to ideally look at this, it would be even.
Right. So if I can just jump in. So I think, when you start looking at the data raises questions. And I think for the LIR, I think the point that Dr. Yoon was trying to make, it's the numbers are they're small. So it's 9 women, right? we were having the same questions. We're putting together some surveys in order to figure out and ask the folks that are leaving why they are leaving. So that initiative is underway in order to really try to isolate and what is it a personal, life choice? Is it conditions, et cetera? So that initiative is underway. And once we have enough data from which to be able to have a trend and start changing, whether it be policies or having conversations about fill in the blanks, whatever the data shows, that initiative is underway, and we will use that information in order to take steps to address.
I'll just make two related comments. One, it would be useful to see this data on something more than a single quarter, just so we can compare it, because I don't know if this is an emerging trend or this is, to what you were saying, or consistent.
Yeah, my sense is that it's consistent.
Right.
I think I remember 18, 19, 20% women in the MTA overall was pretty standard, and no one should accept that, obviously. So now we're in like the 4th and 5th year of seeing
Yeah,
this.
my comment is not about whether our intake is, my comment is about retention. So, and my second comment would be on that point. So whether you're Netflix and you're acquiring subscribers, whether you are MasterCard and acquiring subscribers, or you're the MTA and acquiring talent, it is a lot easier to attract someone than to retain them. You want to keep, it's a lot harder to attract someone than retain them. Once you get someone to come to your job, you want to keep them, because it's a lot more expensive to go find a new person. So all I'm saying is that we should, and you have the benefit of having multiple agencies to compare. We clearly have agencies that are better at retaining than others. Bridges and Tunnels was incredible stats on retention. So we have our own little laboratory to understand where success comes from.
And I think one of the things that I will just make a plug for, and I think you were here for my presentation to the board last, Cuny, I know. Besides Cuny, one of the things that I discussed was part of the consolidation effort actually highlighted was that we had different ways of keeping and tracking data that was all over the place, right? And so a lot of the work happened at the end of last year and early this year to standardize how we do data so that we can have a bird's eye view and ask these questions across all of the agencies, right? So this is kind of a nascent information source, which is going to give us the ability to do a lot more analysis and a lot more strategizing across the board so that we can, kind of tweak and make changes where necessary. But I think, we're at a time now that we finally have, I think, our data is in the best place that we've had it in a while. And that, in conjunction with some of the initiatives that we're doing in order to try and find that information, doing the exit surveys, why are you leaving, et cetera, we're on the right path.
Let me just add one more thing on there, and thank you so much for that question. It was because of a question that was similar to that in one of our earlier meetings that we came up with the exit survey, and we have started that. And as Lisette has indicated, that we are working with that data to find out the answers to those questions. The other thing about the continuum of the data, so each year we start with the first quarter, and then it works up, so it's cumulative. So we don't just look quarter at a time. So second quarter, we'll be looking at 6 months, third quarter, 9 months, and at the end of the year, we'll see the entire years and what has happened in that time period.
Thank you, Chair. So Dr. Green, I loved how you said you do want to see it over a continuum, over a time period. It would be great to be able to compare it to last year or the year prior to just get a sense of, are we making progress here? Because what you and Lisette highlighted were an amazing number of things that you're doing to try to recruit people. Love the Cuny. I love, just the expansion with the new employment for women, the non-traditional employment for women, such a great organization. So I think that's really key. I just have two questions. So one, MTA does have paid family leave. Is that true?
We follow the state's paid family leave law.
Yeah, so it's 6 weeks, and so there is a paid family leave policy. Okay, and then you were talking about telework. I'm just curious about the schedule or the timing of that.
So we're set to launch in July. So it's 1 day a week.
That's great news.
Okay.
So
Mr. Miranda?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
To follow up with your question, one of the challenges that we're going to have with trying to do any type of trending is because of consolidation. So you cannot compare what was there last year to what's there this year because we have just settled a lot of that data. Perfect example would be construction and development. When we even looked at this quarter, it was 115 employees last year at this time and well over 1,500 or 1,600 this year. So the trending would not be accurate. So to do that, but from here, we will be able to do that. We will be able to go back and look from year to year and do that trending analysis.
Thank you. I don't know if this is more of a question or a comment, but from the 4 categories that you show us in terms of the jobs areas, we noticed that the 2 categories that were consistent, probably not on the right percentages, were females and Hispanics. So at some point, probably not today, but I would like to understand a little bit more about some of the outreach that is being done specifically for the Hispanic community. And the other thing is, like, a question would be, do you, in the process of application, have some sort of a value added for people that have more than one language?
In terms of
Language skills, yes, in the application process.
I think it probably depends on what the job is for and whether or not knowing multiple language is a requirement of the position. So there's not a blanket, you get extra points for that or not. So I think it really is dependent on what the job opening is and if it's a preferred quality, a qualification or not. But it's dependent on the job.
Thank you.
Chair, I was wondering, I think Diversity Committee meets only 4 times a year, so it'd be great to think about what goals we're shooting for. I know I saw the broad categories of what we're shooting for, but what goals we might be shooting for. I know there's a lot of underutilization data that's really helpful, so I don't know if that's something we should talk about offline, but thinking about the progress that our committee can make in the next year or so.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a great idea. I had a question. We had, since a majority of our workforce is subject to the civil service exam, and Lizette, thank you. You told us that that is also an impediment to bringing in people of color, women and people of color, perhaps, or just bringing on people on board. They're subject to the civil service exam. Could you just very high level give us an idea? You talked about the fees also with the civil service exam, what that entails, time and money.
Happy to do that. Since I came from DCAS, I know a little bit about it. It's not about submitting an application and being interviewed and being hired. The process, as required by law, is that you have to take a test. So if I'm an applicant, I have to find the job that I want, hope that there's a test scheduled, apply for the test, pay for it, take it, pass, get on a list, and wait to be called. And then once you get called, depending on what the job is, go through training, go through background checks, et cetera. So there's a number of steps that are required. Now, I think the city and the MTA have worked to, in many ways, have worked to kind of ease some of those requirements wherever possible. There is a fee waiver process if you don't have the ability to pay. There's a lot of information on how to apply for a fee waiver. I think that we did a lot of work with the Human Resources Administration in order to streamline those things. I know that for certain titles, we worked with the technical high schools to try and make the requirements a little less onerous. So for some titles, we worked to change the timing of having certain qualifications, so to give people enough time to be able to get that while they're waiting to be called off a list. And we, I believe it was for the bus operator title, we worked with the Department of Labor in order to get, help with scheduling CDL exams. So we work from different angles on trying to reduce some of the steps or to make it easier for people to get in the queue But it is, it's a system that we have to work on the front end to get as many people, as many diverse people as possible to learn how to take the exams and navigate that system.
One of the added challenges there is when we have our equal opportunity goals, a lot of that centers around that population, the 85%. And there are some wait lists that are quite lengthy, so it's pretty hard to forecast, what the diversity is going to be coming off of those civil service wait lists. And so when we have to put in our annual short-term and long-term goals and how we're going to achieve, when we have underutilizations, that makes it quite a bit difficult.
George Cleary, who's going to give us a presentation on the MTA Small Business Mentoring Program, as most know, which is now a New York State law until 2029. And we've been retooling the program internally with our president, Springer, and also Mark Roach, in making sure that there's greater efficiencies and there's greater diversity. And so we're focusing on the diversity within the diversity. That means that what we need to do to recruit more Black and Hispanic and Asian American contractors and get them, in fact, integrated into the various programs that we have here. George.
Can everybody hear me? All right. Good afternoon, Chairperson Velez and board member. My full report is on page 118, and my numbers I'm reporting today will be as of March 31st. Program in 2021, the program awarded 67 contracts, totaling $70.3 million. In 2022 first quarter, program have awarded 3 contracts, totaling a little over $2 million. Since the inception of our program, we have awarded 521 contracts, totaling $558.2 million. This resulted in an estimated 13,000 jobs that were created. We pre-qualified 22 service-disabled-owned business certified firms, and 4 of those firms have been awarded contracts totaling $2.5 million. Our loan program, since the inception of our loan program, 138 loans have been approved, totaling $119 million. Our surety bond assistance program assists our Tier 2 and federal program, which yielded $500 million in surety bond to our contractors. And our training program, construction training, over 1,000 firms have participated in our construction training program since the inception of the program. Next slide, please. Currently, we're exceeding our goals, and we're trending upward. This concludes my executive summary. Thank you. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Thanks, George. And there was a couple of advertising campaigns for the program that we are currently doing right now. I'm not sure if we have time to show those brief clips.
We do.
No, we don't. And so does that mean that we need to stop now? Yes. So unfortunately, we've been told that we need to stop the diversity committee meeting. And so that's it.
Okay, more of a reason for us to meet more often and have some more discussions. Because I actually had a question for Lorraine as well, but let me ask. Nope, that's a good question. Lorraine Warren, I had a quick question. You had indicated on your Dbe certification that it took 29 days on average to certify, but in the last quarter or the last reporting period, it was 57 days. Was a big delta, did you?
Yeah, it was higher because the number was higher because we had hired new staff and they were undergoing training.
Okay. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to look for a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? The meeting is adjourned.